afternoon. I am Omar Jahwar, and I'm very excited to be here. This has been a great experience for me. I've never had the pleasure of being involved in the TED idea until now. And I want to thank Jim and Sharon and just others who have embraced what I do and asked that I bring it to this stage. This was unbelievable. And I was so excited. I got dressed up. And I was going across the street to 7-Eleven to get me something to eat. I love the food, but you know, I just wanted to kind of venture out. And I messed up my heel on my shoe. So I want to thank the young man in the back for putting tape on my shoe, and so I wouldn't trip when I came out. But for the last 15 years or more of my life, I have worked to end youth violence and change youth culture. And I'm very serious about that. That's not a colloquialism. I don't say that to be coy or as some phrase. Every day of my life, I get up and I think about what is our best way to get young people to believe in life. And so what I do, I go to the gang leaders and those who the young people count as their heroes. And I ask them, would they mind being an ambassador of peace? And sometimes that works out well and sometimes not so much. But I do that every day, and we attempt to change the idea of peace in the mind of young people that we serve. It's interesting. I remember, when I was thinking about this survival, how to really impact human survival, it just threw me back. For about 5 years, I was the first gang specialist hired at the state prison. So what I did in the prison is I would go into a prison. If you guys were into a violent conflict and you were from a different gang, my job was to create a civility pact, a social compact between the two gangs to get them to agree to peace. That's hard work. And I can't, tell you how many times I went home saying, why am I doing this? Because they're not paying me a whole lot. And you can easily be called a snitch or this or that. So it was a very difficult line of duty, but I believe that I was called to do that. But it was just amazing. When I was thinking about this TED Talk, it threw me back into a situation that I was in, talking about survival. I never forget, and this is a very funny story, so if you don't laugh, I will bring gang members in here to make you laugh. But no, I'm just kidding. But look, what happened, I took a young man on a furlough, and a furlough is when you take someone out of prison and you take them to their home because they have been a good prisoner. So this young man, he had shot himself in the head. Okay, he had a bullet lodged in his brain. That's always a sign that you shouldn't take him outside the prison. But he had shot himself in the head because he had put it on his gang that if I would show my love to the gang by shooting myself, and he had a bullet in his head, but I thought we had had a compact, a peace agreement. We had become close, so I took him to his funeral of his grandmother. And so when we were in the funeral, the people at the funeral kept looking back at me, and I kept looking back, and I'm saying, this is kind of uncomfortable, but okay. So we sat down, and so finally after the funeral, all of his friends gathered around me, and they said, Mr. Omar, listen, we appreciate you, man. We love you. You just like us. I said, well, thank you. They said, but we got a problem. He was going to escape today. And we thought you was going to set up the furlough. We didn't think you was going to take him. I said, well, you can't escape today because I'm here, right? So I called back to the prison. This is a very true story. I'm not making this up. I called back to the prison, and I called one of his OGs. The OG is the guy who runs the gang. I called his OG. I said, hey, man, this dude talking about running, I need your help. I need it right now. And so the OG got him on the phone and got him back in my car, and we went back to the prison. We were in the prison, and when we came back, the OG guy, and this guy was just 15 years old, but he was built like Mike Tyson. He was a very young guy, very strong. He was standing at the gate. He was standing on the inside. And so when I got in, he said, come here for a second, Mr. Omar. I said, yes, sir. What's going on? He said, listen, man, now I made sure you was okay. He said, but let me ask you something. Did you know he shot himself in the head? I said, yes. He said, well, let me give you some advice. Don't take nobody else on a furlough that shot themselves. So that's my advice to you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Don't do it. It don't work. But this guy's name was Chris. And I'm going to tell you something. This guy became my advocate in the prison. And I've been thinking about this whole theme of human survival. And very seriously, this young man became my advocate in the prison. He became my ambassador. I used to do this deal called the Umoja Council, a Swahili word that means unity. And in that unity council, we would get every gang leader from Crips, Blood, Latin Kings, Folk, People Nation, Aryan Nation, it didn't matter. And we would put them in a place, and I would teach them how to negotiate, teach them how to believe in peace. And it was very interesting. This young man was the leader of that council. And I'll never forget taking him back to his prison cell, and I was leaving out. And I was going back to my house, and I said, "You okay?" He said, "I'm good." We hugged. I said, "Okay, brother, I'll see you in the morning. Let's just keep it peace, no problem." And I left out. And when I left out, I heard a faint cry. I heard that young man kind of crying. And so I asked the guard, "Let me back in his cell." And I went back in, and I said, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "Man, because as much as I believe in what you're saying to me, I don't believe that I can make it when you're not around. I don't believe that your words can stop the bullets that's going to come after me. I don't believe that my mother is going to make it," because the way he became a gang leader, his brother was killed in the street when he was 14, and he was standing next to his brother. So his brother's dying breath was to pass him the leadership of his gang. That's true. His mother, when I would meet with his mother, she used to have a Bible and whiskey. She said, "Sometime this one work and sometime that one work." I said, "Mama, I understand. Give me some of both of them, you know." And we would sit down and we would negotiate using the scripture and the whiskey. But, you know, take that off tape, but I'm just saying. My mama don't know that. But we would use any tool that we could to cope. And so this is what I thought about. And so I've been doing this for the last 20 years, trying to figure out how, because even though I deal in a tough topic, I am an eternal optimist. I believe in young people. I seriously believe in young people. I believe it in my heart. I believe that young people desire to do well. I believe that poverty is not an excuse for violence. I believe that if you can look up, you can get up. I believe in all of those ideas that make young people alive. But I have to be honest, when Sharon presented me with the topic of survival, I went back in time and I saw so many young people that I thought were strong enough to survive, but they did not make it. That young man I'm talking about, Chris, he is in a prison right now. He's in a prison for the rest of his life because when he got out, he lived with me for a while. He stayed with me for a while. He taught me how to comb my little girl's hair. That's how tight we had become. But when he went to his own apartment, he chose to do a crime that cost him the rest of his life. I thought about Milo. I spoke in Congress one time. And when I spoke in Congress, this young man who was the leader of the Latin King gangs, he became just like a son to me. He went to D.C. with me. And if you know anything about me, I'm never on time and I'm not an organizer. That's just not my strength. I'm a visionary, I can, but don't ask me to do paperwork. It's just not what I do. This is a true story. We got in separate cabs, and the cab that I was in, I was not paying attention. I was on the phone. The cab took him and two other gang leaders to the airport and took me somewhere else. And when I recognized where I was at, I said, no, we got to go to the airport. So these guys were at the D.C. airport by themselves while they were still wards of the state. So don't be mad. It already happened, so we apologize. Listen, these guys, and this is a true story. I know I got a lot of stories, but this is a true story. This guy, I promise, I was so afraid that these guys had escaped because they were not with supervision. I was the kind of staff, no, you don't need the handcuffs. You don't need to be in oranges. I was that guy. And these guys were at the D.C. airport by themselves. Do you know what they did? I called to the state. I said, listen, about 3 hours later, because I was looking for them, I couldn't find them. I said, So I called back to the state prison. I said, listen, I know you ain't going to believe this, but I lost the kids. They said, "What?" I said, they said, Omar, listen. They tried to stop the pilot and said that they lost you. And they would not let the pilot leave until you got on a plane, until we convinced them. They called and said, hey, man, these guys, and they took them back on the plane. These guys caught a cab from Lovefield back to the prison. That's pretty good, you know. They caught a cab back to the prison. And when I got to the prison, you know, I got demoted. But, hey, it was Omar can't take people out. But the point I'm making is, this guy did not make it. He ended up in prison. So many others that I love did not make it. And I wondered, sincerely, what is the problem? What's happened with our survival technique? And then there's one young man that's working for me right now, Anton Lucky, who started the Blood gangs in Dallas. He was the leader of the Bloods. He started it. He created the whole idea. He works for me. He's been with me for 10 years. He has been with me in every scenario and has never given up. And I wondered what was the difference between Anton and these other guys. And I think it's one major difference. Anton is touched by me every day. See, I don't think that we can diminish the human touch, the human voice. I'm trying to build a ladder of hands reaching down to young people and reaching up so that they can believe that they can come out, not because of an idea or a technology, but because of the heart and the strength of being human, being alive. Anton and I talk every day. He is just like a son to me. And I want to say to you that I believe that if we don't touch each other, we can't change the world. Let's help each other. Let's change the world. Thank you very much.